How can we possibly conclude the Capital Forum without including a favorite segment of many households? And that's Chit Chat with Manoj. I like the way Mr. Singh always says, life is short, be happy. I'm just wondering how many of us actually utilize his quote. We all agree that Zindagi is choti, and we should try to be happy with every moment of our lives. But that's so much for my input. Let's hear Mr. Singh's outlook in Chit Chat with Manoj.
Hello, Adab, Namaste. Today we are going to talk about an important topic very near and dear to my heart, philanthropy, charity, giving back. And today I'm really honored that Ramesh could come to my show, Ramesh Mahalingham. And we are going to talk about a very important and good charity organization, Pratham Foundation. Ramesh is the president of Pratham DC. He was formerly also president of Pratham USA, and he sits on the board of Pratham's vocational skilling program. Welcome, Ramesh.
Thank you, Manoj. Thank you for having me on the show.
First, maybe let the audience know a little bit background about yourself. How did you know about Pratham, and why did you decide to support Pratham?
Thank you, Manoj, for the question. In 2002, I was on a plane to India, and the person sitting beside me was on the board of Pratham USA. It was a long flight. I was obviously captive audience to that board member. We spent several hours talking. We found that we had several other things in common, except for Pratham, where he was explaining to me what they do and things like that. So I was very, very impressed with what he had to say about the organization. And since then, I decided that I would want to get involved. Now, as things happen in the corporate world, at that time I was CFO of a company which was merging with another company. Mm-hmm. It took a couple of years before I could really say that, look, now, despite all the things going on in my professional life, I'm going to commit time. And luckily, my wife, Chit, also was able to commit time. So we got involved and started Pratham Raleigh chapter. We were living in Raleigh at that time. And then on, of course, like you mentioned, I became president of Pratham USA, and I've stayed involved since then.
Good. So let us know about what is the mission of Pratham, and how is it different from organizations like Ekal Vidyalaya or Magic Bus. They all seem to be wanting to provide education and good life to poor children in India.
Thanks. That's, I think, a very important question. Pratham, in Sanskrit means primary first. So what Pratham does is gives children the very basic level of learning to be able to read and write initially in their mother tongue, and hopefully after that in Hindi and English and a few other languages. So this skill, you may be surprised to know that more than 100 million children are either really not even at this level or seriously at risk of dropping out of school. And what happens is, in India, when children do go to school, and about 96% of the children in India go to school, they do not end up learning some very basic skills. Reading is not focused on in the Indian school system. So that provided a huge gap in the learning outcomes and systems of the country. And Pratham, due to its, I would say, international way of thinking and approach, the founder of Pratham used to be living in the US. So he found, first of all, identified this gap and decided that he should bridge this gap. So he devised, along with his colleagues, an accelerated learning technique, which really helped children to read and write in 2 months' time. So that's really the primary focus of Pratham. Pratham does a few other things, which I can talk about later if there is time. Now, importantly, what might be interesting for the audience to know as well is how are they different from the other organizations you mentioned. Ekal, for example, is focused on, obviously primary education, but they're focused on the tribal areas. Now, Pratham is nationwide. It's present in 21 states in India, and about 30 cities in India. So they are present in slums as well as the villages. So that is a very important difference. And the other difference is, even in terms of primary school, primary level learning, Pratham is about learning and not necessarily schooling children. I mean, Pratham is getting even involved and is even relevant only because schools are not really teaching children how to read and write. So that's the difference between, say, Ekal and Pratham. Now, Magic Bus is a great organization as well, and they really teaching children, various skills by playing sport and things like that. I would consider that to be a very, very different organization. Of course, all these organizations like Ekal and Magic Bus are required for India's problems.
Yes. I think all these things you mentioned, all of these organizations are doing a great job, because I come from a rural area of India and I just came back and I exactly see what is happening. First of all, the teachers don't even come, the government teachers, and their learning skills are really poor, and also it's badly needed. It's a partnership, I think, that us and the government have to make an effort to make this happen. I solely understand it. So provide us some good example. I mean, of course, we don't want to mention any names. Pick some and which really made sort of an example of how you made a difference in someone, children's, a child's life.
Okay, thanks. That's an important question because Pratham is all about making impact and making difference in people's lives. Now, what I would do is Pratham really reaches like 4 million children every year. So it really operates on scale. So rather than giving examples of individual children, like you said, I would really talk about the types of children who get help, the types of people with certain backgrounds who really seem to be getting a lot of help from Pratham. One of the, some of the children who come from Naxalite-infected areas, where the education system is in ruins, and then very few other organizations go there, and Pratham has been able to convince these even the Naxalites that their entering these areas is good for their own communities and children. Now we have stories about how, despite all the avoidable violence that is taking place in these communities, Pratham is there side by side teaching children how to read and write, which is really very important because that will help people to really understand the tragedy of violence. Now, other than that, there's a couple of other programs where individual, I would say, children, a little bit older children, are picked up for being helped. One of them is what we call as a second chance program. This program involves teaching, there's a secondary school dropout, a girl who was dropped out of secondary school and cannot really complete matriculation at 10th grade, as we call it in the US. And Pratham helps these girls to really read and write. One of the students for this program came from the backward community, and she was really not even accepted in schools in some areas where she lived. And the Pratham teachers made sure that these children are able to attend school, attend the Pratham school, and be able to pass the 10th grade. So that's a terrific example of how Pratham has helped. Now, Pratham also does work on livelihood and vocational skilling. You mentioned about the board that I'm sitting on. And in this program, Pratham has managed to help some girls who really are the very first women in their families to start working. Children who may not necessarily be wanting to go through the school system, to 10th, 12th and all that, but who have other skills. For example, there is this young girl actually who really learned to be a beautician. And Pratham, for example, has a collaboration with Godrej, and there's a co-branded certificate of Pratham/Godrej, which this girl obtained, which gave her the ability to earn and support her family.
Very good. One of the things when I decide whom I want to give to charities and is I look at some of these big foundations like United Way or World Wildlife Fund. First question comes to my mind is, what is the overhead? How much of my dollar is actually reaching the cause or the victim or the support we want to give? And a lot of times I decide that maybe, especially in India, we go and do a lot of social work ourselves, myself and my wife Geeta. So how much overhead does Pratham have in management, and how many cents in a dollar really go to these children?
That's a very important question as well, because we take this very seriously, the whole expense part of it very seriously. Pratham, I need to talk about two parts. One is Pratham USA, which is where I belong, at least primarily because I'm a volunteer at Pratham USA. So this is the charity registered in the US. 92 cents of every dollar that is raised goes to programs back in India, to Pratham in India. And how is it that we are able to keep our expenses very low? It's because we have a lot of volunteers, people like me who spend a lot of personal time and provide our skills, talent. And we also have a very generous board which gives substantial amount of money, which reduces the expense ratios. So even back in India, once we really send the money to India, we also want to make sure that almost all of it goes to programs. The Pratham founder has set up a organizational model where more than 96% of every dollar that he receives is used on programs. So there is very little of administrative costs, and some of the senior employees of Pratham India are really paid by the corporate sector. So that way, Pratham in India has very little by way of overhead. So we are proud of the expense ratio, our effectiveness and efficiency here. And in Pratham USA is a 4-star charity as rated by Charity Navigator, and we have been that way for several years.
That's very good. Good to know. So let's look at the camera, and here a lot of audience. We have a South Asian audience. Why should they support Pratham? Can you summarize in a few lines, an elevator speech?
Sure, certainly, no problem at all. First of all, Pratham is a very, very cost-effective charity. I only talked about expenses, but what is even more important is to know that Pratham has very low-cost programs. For example, Pratham is able to teach a child for an entire year for like $25 per year. So this is really very low, considering that the costs in India have gone up substantially. The second reason to support Pratham is really a national organization. I would almost say international. It's present in very, very many parts of India. And it makes sure that any program that it's operating is scalable and is able to test in one corner of the country and scale it up across the country. And even internationally, Pratham methods are becoming very relevant for many developing countries. Many of the South Asian countries and African countries are beginning to follow the Pratham model. And the third important aspect is transparency. So apart from the overhead ratios, which of course we need to keep low, and we do keep low, there is a high level of transparency with Pratham's operation, both in India and the US. In the US, we have a very distinguished board of directors, which is really providing governance over how the Pratham funds are used. And we continue to, of course, subject ourselves to evaluations here. In India, the organization is evaluated, apart from being audited by the big 4 audit firms. They go through evaluations where several educational institutions or foundations are constantly assessing Pratham's methods. And one of them is MIT. MIT Poverty Action Lab is constantly monitoring programs back in India. These are some of the reasons.
Good to know, because it sounds like to me it's very professionally managed, and it's like Bill Gates Foundation, and everything is very well tracked, audited, and accountability is there. So I would definitely, I had come to your gala and would like to support Pratham. Very quickly, I want to also know about, you just had a gala, and how much money did you raise, and what was a short message or summarized message of Ajay Banga, CEO of MasterCard? I missed the program. I really wanted to hear him.
We certainly missed you at the program as well. The gala itself was highly successful. We had more than 220 guests. So we also had raised about $210,000. And this is really much higher than the ones that we raised last year. Last year we raised about $175,000, and the year is not even over. Now, in terms of message, Ajay Banga was very supportive of what Pratham does back in India.
Thanks, Ramesh, for coming on the show. I think we are running out of time. I'll now end it with a good quote which summarizes very well from a famous poet and writer from Lebanon, Khalil Gibran. Generosity is giving more than you can. Generosity is giving more than you can, and pride is taking less than you need. Very well said, beautiful. Thank you all. Goodbye. All the best. And remember, life is short. Have fun.